There once was a man named Oda who was the king of manga. He had fame, power, and wealth beyond your wildest dreams. Before they optioned his story, these were the final words he said.
My manga is yours for the taking, but you'll have to license it first. I left my cash cow in one piece.
Ever since, distribution companies in the United States set sail for their boardrooms, searching for One Piece, the show that would make them bank. One Piece is a series that needs no introduction, so I won't give it one. Eiichiro Oda is a man responsible for a multimedia franchise that has made more money than God and resulted in an anime with a current collective runtime of nearly 400 straight hours. 4Kids, however, might need some additional explaining. For those of you Zoomers out there in the audience, anime outside of Japan didn't used to be anywhere near as accessible nor widespread as it is today. We didn't have your Crunchy Raps or your Nya.SIs. The late 90s, early 2000s certainly weren't the dark times where everything was based on passing around VHS rips, but it was before things really took off. Anime at large was still being treated as cartoons, which meant that they were for kids. This wasn't true, obviously, and led to a lot of very unlucky children getting stuff they really shouldn't have been watching from Blockbuster, but that was the common sentiment. And if anime was cartoons, and cartoons were for kids, then that meant anime was a vehicle for selling toys. Marketing toys to children was 4Kids' bag. They'd gotten a head start back in the 80s with their joint invention of Thundercats with Rankin Bass, and they'd secured an exclusive games licensing partnership with Nintendo around the release of the first Legend of Zelda. Their ability to sell merch was cemented as inarguable with the release of Pokémon, and was only furthered when they got the Yu-Gi-Oh! License. Actually, 4Kids liked making Yu-Gi-Oh! Merch a bit too much. We'll get to that. 4Kids put themselves in charge of the TV and movie work, and their former namesake and child division Leisure Concepts Incorporated handled the product deals. Even with all of the fingers that were in the proverbial pie, 4Kids was still bringing in a hefty sum. Every pack of trading cards, every action figure, every original song, every can of SpaghettiOs, every KFC promo toy, every lunchbox and pack of stickers, it was all money in the bank for 4Kids. Once they got a hold of the Pokémon license, the company's net income skyrocketed from $739,000 in 1997 to nearly $24 million in '99. Making more than 30 times the cash in just 2 years is the kind of revenue spike that most companies can only dream of. 4Kids had been riding a high for over 20 years without faltering, racking up win after win after win. There was a period of time where they ended up buying a 3% stake in the Pokémon Company. The entire Pokémon Company. 4Kids weren't in danger of losing money. In fact, they couldn't stop making money. And when you're a company with cash to burn, it's an easy call to take a few extra risks. Risks like buying the distribution rights to One Piece. The story, as it went, isn't really that complicated. 4Kids, still riding the high of Pokémon and Yu-Gi-Oh!, decided that they wanted more. Every company does, after all. 2 series still under active production weren't enough. Pokémon remains the single most profitable media franchise in the world after nearly 2 straight decades on top. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been going for 29 seasons, and that's just the TV show. Despite the immense success that they already had, 4Kids got greedy. They started buying up more licenses, looking to make more shows to sell more merchandise. Licensing fees, obviously, are expensive, but it wasn't long before they got lucky. Eventually, they were sold one hell of a package deal by Toei. There was some anime license that they wanted, it differs what this was depending on who you ask, and Toei agreed to let 4Kids have it. But to get this license, 4Kids would need to buy it in a bundle, and included in this bundle was One Piece. Well, what luck! Not only would they get the license that they actually wanted, but they'd get yet another massively popular IP to dub for English-speaking audiences as a bonus. When 4Kids got started on their dub work, however, they realized something awful. They'd been duped. Toei, conniving chess masters that they were, had intentionally dumped One Piece on 4Kids with the knowledge that it was undubbable for an audience of Western children. Standards and practices at Fox would never allow for showing things like smoking or guns. I mean, nobody had ever been allowed to market these things to American children before. And besides, the company was called 4Kids, not 4Teens. They needed to make this fit into a Saturday morning time slot, flanked by advertisements for action figures and breakfast cereals. And in case you need proof of that, according to Platypus Comics, the pilot episode, the first time One Piece ever aired on TV in the West, was even going to be hosted by Lil Romeo, so the kids would know that the show was cool. They couldn't get him, though, so instead they settled for Orion. Who is Orion? Oh shit, he's Omarion's brother. Anyway, 4Kids were gonna have to hack a lot of chunks off One Piece to make it work. How dastardly! If only they hadn't been deceived by those wily businessmen at Toei. 4Kids assumed that they were getting a deal, and they were actually buying a white elephant. The license cost too much to not do anything with, but whatever they made was going to be too rough to be especially profitable. 4Kids were tricked into being the ones holding the bag, and Toei got away with a big burlap sack full of cash. Now that's a clean story. It's an easy one. It's the one that 4Kids CEO Mark Kirk stood by. It makes sense, and provides 4Kids with an easy out. The story shows that their failure was due to being outfoxed, not because they were just incompetent. And, like a lot of stories, it's probably a lie. There's a blog post from a writer named FIDDLETWIX'S that goes way, way deeper into this than I could ever hope to with this video, and it's largely thanks to her collected research that we can take a much more likely guess as to what actually happened. Links are in the description if you want to read the full thing, and you should, but I'll give you the quick version here. Essentially, the most obvious piece of evidence we have towards 4Kids not being duped is the fact that they were actively competing with Funimation to try getting their hands on the rights. Funimation went to the trouble of pre-registering a website and were bidding through the nose to try securing distribution, and they still got beat out by whatever it was 4Kids was offering. Not just that, but 4Kids was running as much of a rush job as they could with One Piece in order to remain market competitive. They were aiming for the fastest possible turnaround to secure a return on a hefty investment not just for themselves, but for parent company Toei. And not just that, either. Mark Kirk claimed that 4Kids was legally obligated to see the One Piece contract through all the way until August of 2009 as part of their licensing deal. But 4Kids ended their involvement with One Piece in December of 2006. How solid of a contract could it have been if they managed to get out of it 2.5 years early? There's a bit of a bad habit of the collective internet to take a widespread story, assume that there's gotta be something more to it, and then invent reality around a new narrative to make it juicier. It's not always wrong, per se, and it's good for us to interrogate what people hold to be common knowledge. That's how we learn, after all. If we never challenge an assumption, we never make progress on anything. But we've also got to recognize that it's not always that deep. Just because everyone online spent the better part of a decade rightfully clowning the shit out of 4Kids doesn't mean that the correct course of action is to then work backwards in the hopes of finding something that proves all the naysayers wrong. Does the idea that 4Kids was secretly an innocent victim that got tricked into buying a show they couldn't properly use make for a good story? Sure. Do we have a mountain of evidence to the contrary that suggests it's nothing more than a narrative spun to help 4Kids save face as a company? Absolutely. Sometimes it really is just as simple as a company took a flyer on a very, very bad idea. Speaking of bad ideas, guess who 4Kids put in charge of the DVD distribution? You might think that they would want to handle something like physical media sales internally, since that was, their job. But this would be forgetting one of the only irrefutable truths of the world. Marketers are always the dumbest people in the room. 4Kids let Viz Media take care of the DVDs. Viz Media being a publisher of the company they were leasing One Piece from. It's like paying your landlord double and then letting him sleep in your bed. All Viz had to do was put the episodes that 4Kids made onto a disc with literally no alterations and then cash out on the back of work they didn't do. 4Kids let a middleman skim cash off the top in exchange for home media publication, a service that they already did themselves. Most of the DVDs only had 3 or 4 episodes on them anyway, at a time when you could probably fit at least double without any extra cost. Word of mouth got around that these DVDs were low effort and not worth it, and people stopped buying them. Only 11 volumes ever got released, and they could have easily done 22 at the rate they were going. All of this once again proves that if you entrust the means of production to a group with interests diametrically opposed to your own, it will come back and bite you in your ass. And you will deserve it for not learning from history. The real shame of it, though, is that for all of the complaints about 4Kids' One Piece, most of the actual actors didn't do that bad of a job. I mean, the scripts they were given were garbage, but, find an anime that's airing right now you can't say that about. Some of the performances here are genuinely good. Just because that's in spite of everything surrounding them doesn't mean that they suck by association. Besides, I know what you're really here for. You want to hear some quality 4Kids voice acting. Don't worry. So do I. Let's take this little journey together. We'll start with what's probably been the most memed clip from the 4Kids dub.
Luffy! It's good to see you, buddy! Clearing it! Luffy!
It's like they went into the booth and put a gun in his face. Okay, so let's talk about why I love this read so much. First, it's big, and I mean big. One Piece is famous for having a lot of shots of characters going wildly off-model for the sake of making these hyper-exaggerated expressions. This is explosive. You can't have a character make a face like this and then not deliver like your actual life is in danger. Second, it works with the syllable count and stresses in the original Japanese version. The Japanese line has Zoro scream the word nani, meaning what. Problem is, nani has 2 syllables and what only has 1. You can't draw out the what into a what, because Zoro's mouth clearly moves twice. So what do? Well, change nani to Luffy. Nani, Luffy. 2 syllables, it rhymes, and you match the lip flaps. Clean, memorable, perfect. Now, let's take a look at how Funimation handled the same scene.
Luffy! Thanks for coming, but I got this one. No excuses! Wait, no!
Well, it's definitely not bad. And I want to stress that this isn't a competition. For the people behind the voices, the most important thing is that the vocal director signs off on it. For the people consuming it, art is subjective, and that means you can enjoy whatever you want to enjoy. One Piece has been dubbed into over 30 different languages, so odds are that you might actually prefer one of those outside of the 2 that I'm showing here. I digress. The point is, I prefer the 4Kids version here. I'm saying that like it's a shock, but everyone I've shown it to has said the same. Honestly, preferring the Funimation version here might actually be the contrarian take. It just feels so restrained, especially when you listen to them side by side. I mean, Chris Sabat plays Vegeta. The man can scream, and he's good at it. So let him go all out, really push him for that big delivery. He's still yelling here, but there's no horror tinging his words. And yeah, wait, no is a bit closer to the original, but it's clunky here. It forces a weird stress with a weak first syllable of wait that takes too long to get to the strong finish, and there's not enough time left over to hold the no as a proper shriek. Luffy sounds better to the ears while still preserving the spirit of the text. Literal often isn't better. Okay, well, maybe it's just because this is a sillier scene. People find it funny, so they give it a pass. And that's only gotten easier as time has gone on and the sting of the 4Kids dub has faded. Now that we're 2 whole decades out from its release, there haven't been a ton of complaints still levied at the 4Kids voice actors. People take far greater umbrage with the unfaithful scripts and the censorship more than anything else. But One Piece isn't a back-to-front comedy, and it's got more than a handful of moments where the story demands seriousness and drama. This is where some holes start to show for 4Kids. It's easiest to spot with 2 of the show's principal characters, Blackleg Sanji and Nico Robin. 4Kids may have been able to pull off the occasional joke or two, but how did they stack up against Funimation when it came time to be more low-key?
Finish pouring it yourself. Oh, dear ocean, thank you for this treasure you have shared from your depths. Ah, yes, my love. I can't bear this hardship of loving you from afar. It is too difficult.
Here, pour it yourself. Oh, love, how grateful I am for this day of days. Oh, love, smile on me, for I cannot endure such suffering, such sweet sorrow.
You still haven't told us what it is you're doing here!
Oh, right. You were just so serious about the whole thing that I couldn't help myself. A princess doing whatever it would take to help her country, while making herself an enemy of Baroque works. The idea was just so ridiculous.
Tell us what you're after!
Okay. You've been running around like Chicken Little. I thought I'd help. I felt sorry for a little princess who'd take on all of Baroque works. What should I call you? A spoiled brat?
If you didn't know, 4Kids had a bit of a fascination, let's say, with giving characters random accents. Why does Sanji spend the whole show talking like a cartoon character from Brooklyn? I don't know. Because Joey from Yu-Gi-Oh! Was doing it, I suppose, and he was a hit. Why is Nico Robin putting on an ambiguous southern drawl? Because she's wearing a cowboy hat in her first scene. It really does ring of a first draft scenario. 5 minutes before lunch, and we've got to come up with a vocal gimmick for our characters. Go. Alright, well, one's from Brooklyn, the other's from Texas? Perfect, send it. There's an art to giving your characters funny voices, and the thin line between enjoyable and annoying is in how much screen time you give them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with putting on some wild accent or goofy intonation. You know, some of us wouldn't have careers if it was inherently bad. But you've got to be really careful when you give it to a main character. One Piece is comedic, but it's not a straight comedy, and you need something that can work for the silly scenes as well as it can for the dramatic ones. How would 4Kids even attempt to hit some of the later emotional notes with voices directed to sound this ridiculous? "Die, Luffy, I can't turn my back on my family." "Boy, howdy, I wanna live!" Last example. I imagine that this one is going to be a bit more divided in terms of which version ends up being most preferred. The scene here has a little girl running around with some ice cream. Her dad follows behind her, she trips, and she dumps the ice cream all over someone's pants. We pan up to reveal that she just ruined the trousers of the one and only Captain Smoker, Captain Chaser in the 4Kids dub, and then we get the following exchange.
I'm sorry, my silly pants have eaten all your ice cream. Here, go buy yourself 5 scoops. Let's go.
Sir!
No problem. It all comes out in the wash, they always say. Here, get yourself 5 scoops, eh? Let's go.
Yes, sir!
This one's really not as easy to draw a line through. The performances themselves are almost identical, with extremely similar direction and delivery across the board. There's only one real difference, and that's in the line that Smoker says to soothe the girl. "My silly pants have eaten all of your ice cream" is a nearly literal translation, while "it all comes out in the wash" is likely an attempt by 4Kids to make the line sound a bit less silly. Since the obvious intent is for the line to sound silly, whichever one you settle for is going to depend entirely on which flavor of writing you prefer. Self-aware and goofy faithfulness, or a straight-laced and more serious edit. As with most things, there isn't one core problem with 4Kids' One Piece. There are a few problems that ball up together to become unmanageable. The script is, say it with me, garbage. And even the actors are on record saying that they never understood why they were getting some of the direction they were given. Good writing can elevate bad direction. Good direction can elevate bad writing. If they're both good, you get some Hall of Fame performances. If they're both bad, you get 4Kids' One Piece. After all of the fan outcry and floundering word of mouth, One Piece's failure was an inevitability. So, when 4Kids published their 2005 end-of-fiscal-year reports, the blame for the company's dropping sales and dwindling profit margins fell directly and obviously on Pokémon and Yu-Gi-Oh! In fact, according to this Anime News Network article, One Piece was one of the few shows 4Kids had that was actively making them money. Yeah. You know, it isn't usually a critical flop that seals the fate of a studio. You'd be amazed at what general audiences are willing to put up with. If there's anything you can point to as what kicked off the decline of 4Kids, you can just read the fiscal report that they put out to the public. They were paying their administrative staff $30 million a year, relative to the $10 million they were spending for every single license they had combined. It was unsustainable, and it wouldn't be long after this report was published that the 4Kids coffers ran empty. All of their cash cows had dried up at once, and no executive in their right mind would ever willingly take a pay cut to keep a company afloat. 4Kids were broke. Funimation almost immediately took over for One Piece, and they continue to dub the show to this day. They ended up getting bought out by Crunchyroll, who then got bought out by Sony, and are now the exploitative, monopolistic, union-busting group we all know and love. Just about every actor involved with the 4Kids production was let go. Only 3 people in the entire cast managed to make it over to the Funimation dub, and not a single one of them reprised their original roles. While you might be able to say that some of the performances sound similar between the two dubs, that's just about the only comparison you can draw. The 4Kids dub wound up drifting into lost media territory, seemingly just because nobody cared enough to keep it alive. It wasn't until a few years ago that the lost second half of the 4Kids dub surfaced, and even then, it's not like many people noticed. Why care? It's just 4Kids, right? Surely there was nothing there that we might want to study and actually learn from. 4Kids mostly abandoned licensing anime. Instead, they pursued their true passion, selling bootleg Yu-Gi-Oh! Merchandise until they got sued so hard that they declared bankruptcy to avoid having to send millions in back pay to TV Tokyo. A very brief and limp attempt at a rebrand in the form of 4 Licensing Corporation ended once what was left of the company filed for their second and final bankruptcy in 2017. So, what have we learned from this? Great question. I don't actually know. I usually try to keep the lessons and content on this series relevant to actors, and a cross-company marketing analysis like this likely isn't going to matter to you at all. None of us are going to be kicking off our multi-million-dollar dubbing studios anytime soon, and those of you that are definitely won't be taking my advice without paying my consultancy fee. So try to take this as our lesson of the day. Some gigs you get are just gonna suck. The direction is gonna suck, the scripts are gonna suck, and the final product is really gonna suck. But that doesn't mean that you have to suck. In fact, you should try everything that you can to not suck in spite of how much everything surrounding you sucks. The best case scenario is that your performance ends up being so good that it elevates the entire work. You being in it and you acting your heart out gives someone a reason to legitimately claim the whole thing as one of their favorites. You can save the entire project from the brink because you tried. Even when it sucked, you tried. And the worst case? Well, it fails, but at least you tried. And hey, who knows? It doesn't all have to be for nothing. You can still be recognized for your efforts, even in a bad project. You can still get paid. You will get paid. You might even find more work off of it. You can never say for sure. And maybe there's some schmuck out there, and they make a video 20 years later, just to tell everybody else that you did a pretty good job. Hey everyone, thanks again for sticking around for as long as you have. I know it's been a while. I don't know, I hate to say it, but I'm starting to think maybe I should stop saying that these new episodes are going to be coming soon. Maybe it's a bit more accurate and might keep you waiting a bit less if I just tell you straight up it's going to be out when it's out. And I don't know, I guess maybe that's a better philosophy to follow, is not forcing myself to put these out, but maybe trying to hold myself to a slightly higher standard than I have been. Either way, I'm very happy with how this episode came out, and really the only problem I might have with it was the production time. So, I mean, it's definitely something I can work on, and I'll put the effort in and see, but I'm not going to make any more promises of, oh, it'll be out soon, or oh, it'll be out in X amount of time. No, it'll get done as soon as I finish it. And so, if you've been waiting around for these with bated breath and, sitting on the edge of your seat, just hoping a new episode will come out, then I can really only sincerely apologize and, thank you for being around for as long as you have been. But, yeah, I'm not going to make any empty promises about when these are or are not going to come out. But for those of you that stuck around all the way to the end, for those of you that have been here since the beginning, both of the video and since I started doing this, thank you very, very much. And I hope future episodes are going to be able to keep you engaged, and they'll be just as good for you as they are for me. Anyway, thanks again, and see you around.